Hi. First, before I get started, I want to show you my sign. Can you see my sign? In the back? Okay. I take this with me when I go and pray outside of an abortion facility like Planned Parenthood. I don't know if any of you have done that before. And I like to take my sign with me, particularly when the fathers are there. The husbands or the boyfriends who are taking the mother of their child, or the grandparents who are taking their daughters to abort their grandchildren, especially the grandfathers and the fathers. I want them to see that sign. I was asked to talk to you about healing from an abortion. And I've got some tears in my eyes. Sarah's great. I don't know where she went to. There were tears coming down from my eyes listening to it. Thank you, Sarah. But that doesn't mean there hasn't been any healing going on. But in order for me to tell you about that, I have to tell you about why I needed the healing and why I still do. So, just like Bernadette talked about her box, I've got a box too. But my box is in here. And I'm opening up my box for you tonight. So you see, a little more than 30 years ago, my girlfriend at the time came to me and said she was pregnant and she needed me to give her half the money to get an abortion. So this is how I found out I was a father. When I was young, I used to think that I'm going to get married, and one day my wife is going to come to me and she's going to say, "We're pregnant. We're going to have a baby." And that's how I imagined it would be. And we'd hug each other and we'd be so happy because we were going to be parents. But that's how I found out that I was a father. My girlfriend came to me and she said, "I'm pregnant. I need you to give me half the money so I can get an abortion." So I went to the bank and I took out $200. And on the day of the appointment, I took her to the hospital. And I had intended to stay to take her home, but she said, "No, you don't have to stay. You can go." So I went to work. And the next day, I called her to see how she was, to check on her. And she was mad. She's yelling at me on the phone. And I said, "Wait a minute, I did everything you wanted. I gave you the money, which was $200. I was working full-time, going to school. That was a lot of money. I gave you the money, and I took you to the hospital, and you told me to leave. So now I'm mad, and I'm yelling at a woman that just had an abortion." So I didn't know why she was mad, and I really didn't know why I was mad. I just didn't know what was happening. But when she told me that she was pregnant, I figured that the decision had to be hard for her. So that's why I didn't talk about adoption. I didn't talk about keeping the baby. But I was also just 21 years old, and I was scared and confused myself. But I didn't know what abortion was, and I didn't know what it meant to be a man. So I wasn't always pro-life. Okay, that sign I showed you, I never would have held that sign before, and I never would have been standing here talking to you tonight telling you this, because I wasn't always pro-life. I came into full communion with the Catholic Church in 2004, and that's when I learned what the church teaches about abortion. But even that's not what changed me. What actually changed me was seeing what an abortion is. You know, medical science says that at conception is a unique human being. And when I saw the images of a baby in the womb. And then I saw the pictures of what an abortion is and what it does. That had a major change in my life. Because back then they said it was a blob of tissue, a clump of cells. Now they like to use the term fertilized egg. Well, I'm a fertilized egg, and you're a fertilized egg, and you're a fertilized egg. We just had time to grow. But I didn't know that. So how many days are there in a year? You can talk. Jesus didn't mind. Huh? Yeah, we were married we later got married. We were married for 364 days. But I don't know if that had a definite connection with the abortion, but we never talked about the abortion. But what that taught me, what medical science showed to me, it made me realize when I thought about what we did, what we had done, I can close my eyes and I can see some stranger reaching in with his medical instruments and tearing apart the body of our baby, piece by piece, from her mother's womb. I had paid someone money to kill my baby. But at that time, I didn't know what abortion was. After the divorce, she would occasionally call me. I don't know why she asked for the divorce, but here she is calling me to check on how I'm doing. And one time she told me that she had to have a hysterectomy, and that the only baby that she would conceive was the baby that we had killed through abortion. But again, back then I didn't know what abortion was. I didn't know what it meant to be a man. What does it mean to be a man? It means to protect, to provide, and to sacrifice one's life for his bride, as Christ sacrificed himself for his bride, the church. In Isaiah 49, 14 through 15, it says, "But Zion said, 'The Lord has forsaken me. My Lord has forgotten me.' Can a mother forget her infant, be without tenderness in the womb for the child in her womb? Even should I forget, I will never forget you." So the Lord doesn't forget. And post-abortive mothers and fathers are expected to go on with their lives as if nothing happened. But we don't forget that life because it's written in our hearts and in our souls. But the culture around us refuses to acknowledge the devastation that's left after an abortion. Some of you here today may have had an abortion, or you may know someone who has had an abortion, and they're afraid to tell anybody. They're afraid to talk to their families. They're afraid to confess it to God. And men in particular, we're raised not to show our feelings. We're raised not to cry. And we're told abortion is none of our business. So how dare we mourn the loss of our children, our lost fatherhood. But we have a right given to us by God above the law of man to protect our families, to speak the truth and to say yes to life. Bernie mentioned Rachel's Vineyard. Back in 2007, I attended the first retreat. I was the only man there. There were all these women, a bunch of women there. And I was kind of nervous because I thought, okay, they're probably not going to like me. And during the retreat, there's scripture readings and there's meditations. And then the women told their stories. Like I said, I never talked to the mother of my baby, about it, so I never really knew what she went through. But to hear the women tell their stories, some of them had been abused by men, some of them had been failed by their parents. And then I told my story. And they listened, and they loved me, and they forgave me. So we all shared our silent suffering because we tend to keep it inside. We don't talk about it. No one wants to talk about it. In our society, we don't know what to do with abortion. What do you say to somebody who's had an abortion? Well, what they say is, you can have more children. You made the best decision you could at the time. What do you say when someone tells you they've had an abortion? You say the same thing when somebody loses a child. You say, I'm sorry for your loss. And when you say, I'm sorry for your loss, you're acknowledging their suffering, you're acknowledging their pain, you're acknowledging the life, the person, the soul who's been lost. I'm sorry for your loss. So, I learned who my baby was. I acknowledged her as a person. Her name is Nicole. She has a soul. And I pray, God willing, that I'll see her again someday. So I won't lie, this new relationship can be painful. I opened my box up for you tonight. And Bernie didn't tell you, but I'm going to tell you, we call it the sweet pain. Because if I never had this pain, I never would have known Nicole. It doesn't mean I'm suffering up here. It doesn't mean I haven't accepted God's forgiveness. I've accepted God's forgiveness. He has forgiven me. The mother of my baby, she forgave me. I asked her to forgive me. She said it wasn't your fault. So I accepted that as forgiveness from her. But those of us who've had abortions, the toughest part is forgiving ourselves. So this is my journey of truth and pain, forgiveness, and healing. The truth of what I did, what I didn't do, what I should have done. The pain of knowing the loss of my child and failing as a man. I'm happily married now, and my wife has a daughter from a previous marriage. We have 4 grandchildren and 1 in heaven from a miscarriage, which is another suffering and pain. So what I'm here to tell you now tonight is that I found my lost fatherhood. I found it through the healing of Jesus Christ. May God's grace and peace be upon all of you. Viva Cristo Rey.